Welcome to the All About Pigeons podcast, brought to you by the All About Pigeons nonprofit organization, which is dedicated to promoting education and promotion of the pigeon hobby. Every week, a listener requests to drive our conversations about all things pigeons. Join me, Philip Fry, as we learn and share stories about these incredible birds and this ancient hobby. Today, we're going to be talking about how to become a master breeder. We have with us John Heppner, who is a holder of 7 different master breeder titles, also a judge, lifelong pigeon fancier, and anybody in the show world probably already knows that name from a lot of articles and seeing him at the show. So, John, thanks so much for coming on and talking with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
So can you tell us, when did you first get your very first master breeder certificate?
The first one, I think, was about 1974.
What breed was that in?
That was an English trumpeters.
What are the different breeds that you have your 7 master breeders for?
Well, the second would be English Carriers, Dragoons, Nuns, Berlin Short-Faced Tumblers, Scandaroons. That's 7.
I think we're still missing one.
Missing one? I don't think it should matter to our conversation.
Yeah. And it takes a while to get a master breeder. I was speaking with a gentleman today, and it's taken him quite a number of years to build up and to do this. So can you give us, we'll go into the details of it, but can you give us a breakdown on what is required to get a master breeder certificate?
Yes, there are some hard and fast rules, some of which are not very difficult. You have to be a member of the National Pigeon Association for 3 years. You have to have a 10-year record of successfully showing your pigeons. But the biggest thing, the absolutely biggest thing, is you must improve the breed significantly. And you got to make the breed better than it was. And it should be those kinds of improvements that other breeders want to put into their birds, because it's the right thing that the master breeder is doing. So, in my case, in English trumpeters, I pretty much revolutionized the whole bird by making it shorter, cobbier, which is supposed to have a shortened cobby body, thicker neck, especially a crest development, a high crest, wide circular. It was in some of those areas, the crest, the body, the neck, that I made the big improvements, and pretty much won every show for about 20 years straight. And I sold out my stud twice, but I'm still competitive today. So let me repeat again. The most important thing is you've got to improve the breed. That's what master breeder means. And it shouldn't be taken lightly. You can't just win for 10 years with a mediocre or even a good bird without making it better. The bird must be improved in some significant area that other top breeders acknowledge and want, because it's getting the bird closer to the standard.
Making a change, but it's not actually like away from the standard. It's a change that is consistently into the standard, more towards the standard. That's been missing.
Exactly. Towards the standard. It's got to be towards the standard. Otherwise, people aren't going to accept that.
In your article, it said something where it has to be written by a breeder who also breeds in there, right? So it's someone who kind of like writes a letter of recommendation almost.
Well, it helps in your application to the N.P.A to have good letters of recommendation. What's helpful is if other top breeders of the breed mention maybe the same things that you as the breeder have said in your application, what you have done to improve the breed. And then if other top breeders verify and say that that's what you did, that of course adds more significance to the whole application.
There is a number of points that you're supposed to get, right?
No, there are no points. It's that improvement of the breed, and then we have 3 members that the N.P.A president appoints as the committee that looks at the applications. And sometimes we have to do additional work if you don't know the breed very well. It helps if you have on the committee people that are acquainted with many different breeds. So because I've bred so many different breeds, I often know about the points that you want. But if there's a certain breed that maybe I'm not as familiar with, I sometimes have to call other breeders to verify certain things.
Like you were saying, the 10 years of showing, you have to have an actual record of that.
Well, yes, you need the 10 years. A lot of times the guys will have more, but you need the 10 years. That is one of the criteria. And oddly enough, there are quite a few applications that have everything in order, but they've maybe only shown 8 or 9 years, and sometimes they're not even aware of it. I've had one guy that had 9 years get so terribly mad that he was turned down until I could show him that he had only submitted 9 years. So the next year, he won some more, and he had already pretty much earned the breed, but he needed that 10th year. And then, of course, he got his Master Breeder Award.
And so when you're talking about showing, does this mean only showing, like if you're doing a specialty breed within that specialty club that is recognized by the N.P.A, or only showing at N.P.A shows, or both?
Two things there. Sometimes, like in the case of the English trumpeters, your most competitive shows are at the Pageant of Pigeons in English trumpeters. So if you win there consistently, then there are some birds that get primarily shown on the East Coast, like maybe some short-faced birds, and they show a lot over there and not so much at the National. It is always helpful to have some wins at the National. As a committee, the whole N.P.A likes that because it is an N.P.A Master Breeder Award. But in some cases, there are some people that just can't get to the National, and if they've won a lot, and if they've improved the breed like what the guidelines call for, they may get the Master Breeder Award, even though they may have shown very little at the National.
So N.P.A affiliated shows then?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, those count, because very often some of those specialty club meets that aren't being held at the pageant have the most competition. It may be at Des Moines, it could be, or at Louisville, Youngbird Show, many wins over there. Those all count. What doesn't count for much is the little summer lawn shows and things like that. Those aren't really considered.
Yeah, and that makes sense because you are getting significantly more competition in some of like the Youngbird Show and the pageant and things like that.
Let me just add, if perchance they pick best bird in the show like they do at the pageant and at the National now, if you win the whole show, the pageant or the National, and you put in for a Master Breeder for that breed, that is impressive, and that counts for a lot too. You still have to have all the 10 years showing that, but that is always a very impressive win. Grand champion of the whole show.
Okay, because you're talking about like there'll be a board of people reviewing to approve of a Master Breeder, and so this will be something that really will stand out.
Correct. Those names, those candidates get submitted back to the whole board, so they have another chance to look at it and go over it and give their assent or say nay on one or two, which seldom happens because the committee is pretty good and it's pretty thorough. 3 men on the committee, or women, 3 people.
Okay, so it's 3 people on the committee. We're at the Grand Nationals this year, and there were some Master Breeders certificates given out. Do you know how many were given out?
Probably 6, maybe 7.
Is that about right? A year? Is that about how many are normally given out?
Pretty close. Sometimes there have been 5, and maybe on occasion there's been 8, but 5 or 6 is pretty normal.
My big question to you, and I understand you've been doing this for your whole life. You got a lifelong history with pigeons. You see a
Yeah.
lot of guys who really spread themselves thin with a lot of different breeds. When I interview these people who really focus and hone in on one breed, and they're the master breeder of that breed, would you say that it's beneficial when you're doing that, when you're breeding pigeons? Is it better to kind of limit your breeds to a certain few, or is it maybe just a loft situation where you want to just be able to keep your birds separate and focus in that way? Or, what kind of tips can you give somebody who is trying to really improve a certain breed in that way?
Well, yes, of course, if you have only one or two breeds, you should be able to make progress a little faster. But it's really a matter of selective breeding. I'm not sure how many people set out to get a Master Breeder Award. In my own case, I hardly ever bred the birds with the thought in mind that I should be able to maybe get a Master Breeder. I have had quite a few different breeds, but I sometimes say I have probably one of the largest hearts for pigeons. And so through the years, one will emphasize certain breeds more than others, but over time, some of these breeds have just been improved by selective breeding, even though I or others may have quite a few breeds. But many people have only one or two breeds they specialize in, and that should help them to get a Master Breeder Award sooner. But I think most of the breeders breed their pigeons just for the sheer joy of raising a young one that is better than either of the parents. And if you keep doing this and keep making your birds better and better through judicious breeding and maybe getting a bird here or there where you're weak, that's the way to get your birds to improve and to get ahead in the development of your breed.
That makes a lot of sense. It's more of a byproduct of just going to your passion and sticking with it.
Right.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about your book that had recently come out as well, the John Heppner Pageantry of Pigeons. So when did that officially get published and come out?
Well, it's got to be at least, it came out maybe 3 years ago. Took me 4 or 5 years to write it. I guess I have to say it's been well received, and I've gotten good reports from people that have purchased it.
Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown as far as what inspired you to write this book?
Well, maybe it's the same reason that I wanted to be the president of the organization, or was willing to, because I thought I had something to offer. And in writing the book, I also thought that I would have something to offer to the fancy to talk about my experiences and write about a lot of different breeds and mention breeding techniques and weaning, keeping your birds healthy, things like that. I guess some of the things that I wrote maybe are not exactly conventional wisdom. And I was inspired by old writers in England that would say, I don't agree with that certain expert so-and-so. And I have now more knowledge than he had because I've learned from all the others. So listen to what I have to say, what this English breeder said. And in some instances, I have similar things to that, where conventional wisdom is something that I haven't gone along with. And I just wanted to put it down so some future breeder feels the same way, because hey, look, John Heppner felt the same way. And maybe one of the things that comes to mind is condition on a pigeon. Judges make condition 80 points, and it's usually no more than 10. But if the bird is not in condition, no matter how good it is, they'll throw it out early. But sometimes I've seen other judges that where the bird is not maybe in quite the same condition, but is so superior in all the other features that it should win because it's so much a better bird overall, even though it may be lacking some in condition. Now, there's some clubs like the domestic show flights You can have a bird that's molting still a little bit, and it can win if it's got the qualities. Most breeds are judges, and most breeds don't like that. One of the reasons I wrote the book too is there's quite a few different breeds that I write about, and I try to impress on the reader what some of the most important features are, and what maybe some of the features are that are very important but aren't getting the attention from the breeders like they should. Case in point would be nuns. The beak is supposed to be short and cobby and parallel to the ground. Well, for years and years and years, people didn't care much about that. They maybe should have more points at the standard. It's only 5 points, so birds had more spindly beaks looking down, and counting 5 points, you could win, with all the other points. But if you look at the standard drawing and you see a beautiful bird with a great outlook, meaning the beak is parallel to the floor, it adds a lot, and it's been neglected through the years. There's some people that are breeding for it, and others mainly worry about everything else and not so much the beak.
Yeah, and all your experience as a judge too probably really plays into a lot of really taking that step back and looking at the breed overall.
Yeah, yes, right. Yeah, judging has been a real challenge. It's hard work, but in the end, it's a lot of fun. I've been all over the world judging. My sweetest job was in South Africa. I was known as the senior judge, and every breed that was there would have, of course, a breed champion. They'd put it in a separate room. And my only job on this beautiful expense-paid trip, great accommodations in South Africa and all the interesting things I learned, all I had to do is take a look at each winner of each breed and place them in the top 10. Pick the top 10, and it took me maybe an hour and a half to do that. Maybe two. I'd look at some as they'd bring them in,
Yeah.
Judging is a real service to the fancy. You should talk some and let the exhibitors know what you're thinking. This bird is good in this area, but it needs more work here. It's a little weak here, but it's real strong here. That way, the exhibitors, especially newer ones, are going to learn from watching the judging experience.
I think that's a really, really good point. We spoke with Rick Barker, and he was really adamant about the same thing with judging, to let them know, what you're looking at when you're holding the bird and why you chose this one over that one. And that's so helpful to the breeders, because if you're just quietly picking up birds and, these ones are good, these ones are bad, and without telling them, then you don't really give them anything to work with. So yeah, that's a really good point right there.
Yeah. Judges need to work on that. In our English trumpeter judging program, we strongly encourage every upcoming judge who wants to become a pageant qualified judge to talk, to speak to the people. In the domestic show flight world, they hardly want you to talk, which was difficult for me when I was judging domestic show flights in New York, because I like to talk.
You get into a certain habit of doing things a certain way, and then whenever you're judging, that's just how you do it.
Yeah, right.
And so if somebody's interested in picking up your book, how can they go about doing that?
Well, simply send me a check at John Heppner. My address is in a lot of the periodicals, but it's 3040 Godfrey Avenue, Gilroy, California, 95020. It's $75 for the book and $10 for the box and shipping and handling, so it's $85.
Well, one of the members of the Arizona Pigeon Club, Vincent Pizzuto, I think he picked up one of your books. He was really impressed with it. He does a lot of our judging as well, and he's also a very vocal judge and very helpful to the breeders when it comes to telling us what we're doing.
Very good. Real good, yeah.
Well, this has been very helpful. I hope that this gives people something to think about when it comes to what's all included when it comes to being a master breeder. know that we got this great resource out there, the Pageantry of Pigeons book, and you can get that from John Heppner himself, mailed right to you. John, I want to thank you so much for coming onto the show and talking some pigeons with us today. It's been great.
Well, it's been a real pleasure, and I want to thank you for what you're doing. Real great. Yeah. Thank you very much. I wish you the best.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to another listener-requested episode of the All About Pigeons podcast. We truly appreciate your support. The soundtrack for the show comes from the pigeon musician Vitel Mizraim. If you have a topic or a guest you'd like to hear more about in future episodes, or if you yourself would like to be a guest and just talk pigeons, please don't hesitate to reach out to us through email at allaboutpigeonspodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. It supports the pigeon hobby and really helps the show. Remember, together the hobby thrives, support each other, and enjoy your pigeons.